start off with the sales tax thing.
I thought Lee said he was going to be here. I saw him at the budget meeting. He said he was going to have to today.
Really?
Yeah.
I wasn't told there would be any presentation.
Yeah.
The stuff that was attached to the agenda was the same stuff that was from last month. The description is the same for last month. The only thing new is the letter. So let me toss it over to Gary.
You're up.
Okay, so we had an ad hoc meeting.
By the way, you got 35 minutes for this if you need.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, we had an ad hoc. Nick showed up, Juan Estrada, Pete showed up, and Sabrina, it was just a kind of an observer. We went through some of the issues associated with the committee, and we came up with a proposed memo to the council and the mayor, and I think that's part of the attachments here. And I served as the ad hoc for that, the chair for that ad hoc. I'd like to continue in that role.
Okay, that'll be set up again next year.
Right.
So if this ad hoc dies tonight.
So that was basically what I had.
Well, the job tonight is to provide a recommendation to council through a manager's budget addendum. That is what our action item is. I'm going to interpret that to mean take a look at the letter that was written and agree that it says what we want it to say. Has everybody read the letter yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what we'll do with this, although Gary was the chair, the letter was written by Juan and Nick. Juan is going to be late if he makes it tonight.
Well, I
at all.
did.
Okay. And Gary?
The three of us.
I did.
One was the guy on the computer, and Nick and massaged it, and I also massaged it. So
Okay.
three of us put together.
Okay. So, everybody take a look at it,
Yeah.
and anybody got anything to say about it?
I don't know if they were looking for specifics, because we didn't give them specifics, and I think we agreed as a group, the last meeting, we didn't have time for specifics, so that's the only thing I think of, is they may be expecting something a little bit more beefy than we were giving them.
My take on this, and one of the things we haven't really got our role defined, okay, what they expect from us, and so it's, I don't want to say it's generic, but it's kind of, we're answering the mail, yeah, we want to do it, we're capable, we have the, capabilities and people necessary to do it. But the specifics, because there's some interpretation of, how these things, general fund, they talk general fund, that kind of stuff. What their expectations of us are for how we're going to perform versus what we're interpreting in that measure going back as well. So I think that needs to get defined. And a real chart. How often we're going to have meetings, how often they're talking about at the end of the year we're going to get a report. It's kind of, things have happened by that time.
And we were even disconnected, or uncertain as a group as to whether we were directing the funds proactively or looking backward and saying, yeah, you did good. Remember, that was one of the basic things.
Yeah, the part where I kept falling apart, and Perry's going to be up next. This is Lee Wilcox, by the way, from the Budget Office. I'm sure he's that. We're on the sales tax thing right now.
Sorry, Lee.
The only very specific thing that was in the resolution that established us as the Oversight Committee says to review local sales tax revenues annually. And so that's the one action item that we have. We don't have that information.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure we do. So hence I call this a punt. There's really nothing here. But Lee, would you want to?
And I agree with it. I just didn't know if we were going to have to put block.
Yeah.
Can I chime in on that real quick, Pete?
Yeah.
I was looking at the Measure B in the St. Clair County Voters Book, and it does say the City Council would be required to appoint an independent citizen oversight committee that would review expenditures of the tax revenues. So that's what it says the purpose of the oversight is. to review expenditures of tax revenues.
You can sit at the table with us, General Lemon, if
Retrospectively
you'd like.
or going forward.
You want to sit with us?
To me, I took it as review, what was done. reviewing after the fact.
Perry, you want in now, or you want to wait for Lee?
What's that?
You had your hand up, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I did. I was very alarmed at the people here that didn't know very much about the the responsibilities of the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. So I went and took it upon myself to draw up this document, which I just went to the website and pulled it off the web. And I think that this should be partly in the letter itself. I mean, there's things in the letter that haven't even been addressed yet, like what accounts that each one is going to, the audit, nothing like that. We're supposed to be able to audit where the money's going, and that's not even in the letter. I would just take a look before you send it in. Just take a look at what I wrote up. I gave you web links to my research material, and you can go ahead and check it out yourself.
Okay, can I,
Go ahead.
so I came up with something comparable to this.
Okay.
For our meeting. The only people that showed up for the ad hoc meeting,
I wasn't invited.
the only people that showed up for the ad hoc meeting were me, Nick, and Juan. Okay, we would have valued your input. I think when we went out at the last meeting looking for volunteers for the ad hoc, several people, I don't know, I didn't capture who the names were,
So what are you trying to say?
that this would have been valuable input at the meeting that we had, that we drafted this letter. So we drafted this letter based on.
So you're
what
telling
some
me
people-
that that's null and void?
No, I'm not. just
Okay, I'm
telling you
asking- I'm
what-
trying to
no,
find out what you're
I'm-
saying.
I'm trying to explain the genesis of this letter, what it was based on, and not a wide perspective of the board of the commissioners.
Okay,
There's three people there.
okay.
What he's saying is you were invited at the last meeting. Anybody who wanted to get on the ad hoc would be ready to go.
Okay.
The more people that participate, the better we're gonna get.
Nick,
That's
next?
a good.
But I want to extend also, your work is appreciated, and it's not null and void, and we should look at it, and we should consider it, whether it's for something that should have to be in this letter, or whether it's part of the broader, I mean, this is the general meeting, so contributing now is not too late. So I think we have to make sure we acknowledge that. And we should look at it for how we go forward with this, because the real important thing is not as much this acknowledgement letter that we're going to send to City Council, but how we're going to conduct ourselves as an oversight committee now and going forward. So this is very relevant. What you described is very relevant to that. We can talk about whether we should put something in there in the letter or change the letter. But it's to be defined how we're going to conduct ourselves. And what are we really going to do, and how are we going to be meaningful in this? And I think that's probably what you're trying to get after. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're trying to.
I just want to make sure that the money goes into an account that we can see.
And I don't think it actually operates that way, but the idea, I think, that we're setting up, we're accepting the responsibility as a body to look at where the approximate $30 to $40 million goes, because it gets dumped into the general fund, is what it does.
And if you look on page 2, I just gave an explanation of just the police department on the accounts that it's going to be floating into. Okay, now there's other ones like fire and EMT that I didn't put down there. I just gave an explanation. See, we can track each one going through these, but I want to make sure that we can track each one as they're being used.
And I think we have to define, if I can extend my conversation a little bit, how we're going to do that, because this is a general fund tax. General fund taxes just do that. They go into the big wide pot. It's a big stir stick. And the advice that was in the paragraph that was a companion to the voter initiative or measure is just that. It's guidance and advice, and it's really can become meaningless unless someone has oversight, and that's us. So what you're kind of speaking to the heart of what we're supposed to do, I think. And I think it's important. I don't know how we exactly, how we act as that body, but that's to be defined, and we're defining that now.
That was one of the
Does that make sense?
handouts. I had 2 or 3 handouts at the meeting, that ad hoc meeting. That's one of them there, and you'll see there's some items on there that kind of parallel what you came up with.
Let's go to Jonathan, and then I think what we should do is go to Lee Wilcox, who knows more than the rest of us combined.
Or we can go to Lee first, and then I can speak afterwards.
So go ahead, Lee.
Okay.
Get some ideas on the table, and then let Lee straighten things out.
So the first thing is I read the letter. I thought the letter was really good. I appreciate Gary and Juan and Nick and Pete, putting this together. Even though I heard Pete wasn't really the one that typed it up, but that's okay. The letter was good. I did think that maybe there should be an extra item in there. There were the 3 items. It says what we expect to do, what was the wordage that was used. Yeah, plan to further refine our process for future years, but I'm thinking there may be, if this is our comment on how we're going to use this oversight committee, how we're going to do it, maybe we should have something in there as materials that we need to actually perform our job. So I thought maybe we should have some, sort of documents from the budget department, from Lee's office, that says total amount of revenues collected, so we know exactly how much money we have to look after. And a detailed or an itemized report of where the funds were spent. So I know it goes into a general fund, it goes into a pot, where it goes from there, okay, but if we collect $26 million, I'd like to see where that $26 million was spent. Because otherwise we can't really do, in my opinion, this oversight. Projections for where the revenues will be spent for the next fiscal year. That's another one that I'd like to see, or the next budget. And a comparison of city budgets spending from the general fund for comparative analysis. So we can kind of see what's happened the last few years, and then what's happening this year, and then what's projected to happen. So we can kind of see where the monies are going, or where the percent allocations are going. So that was my thought.
One of the things, again, one of the handouts I had was from the city manager that came out prior to the ballot, prior to June, the election, or November, whenever it was. And there was the existing budget, and then an allocation of how that money was going to go, when it passed, how much of that money was going to go into what bucket. So you do have that kind of visibility, which you need. Once it goes in the general fund, it's in the general fund. So you kind of need a before and after, before and a proposed, and then the after showing that, okay, this is what we proposed to spend it on, this is what we spend it on, and also, I feel that's important is the results. Just because you put, let's say, $20 million in roads, what did the $20 million get you? Okay, what was the value of that $20 million? You spent $20 million, or as a result of the $20 million, you made several different pedestrian crossings, whatever that money gets allocated for, but you have a tangible tie-in with the dollars spent and what was,
Yeah, so exactly, that's exactly
So that's
something.
kind of where I see it.
That's exactly something that I think that we really need, is that document.
I'm
so we
not
can really see.
I'm not sure at this point right now we can kind of define that until we get more or less the scope of
Yeah.
what we are.
Yeah, because we can't really see that, and that was one of the things that concerned me was the language does say it goes into a general fund. That's fine, but then when you read into the measure, the argument in favor of the measure, Mayor Ricardo puts out, is needed to improve police response times, needed to reduce response times for medical emergencies, where every second counts, is needed to help fight gangs and drugs, is needed to repair roads and infrastructure, and says has strong accountability provisions.
Now,
So
some of those are measurable. You can get metrics on that.
Yeah, so
On
that's
the
exactly-
response time, you get a metric.
Exactly.
That's 2 items. The potholes, road repair, once again, you get metrics on. Gang issues, if they reestablish, let's say, the gang task force or something like that. Once again, that's something you get your arms around. So
Exactly.
there's like 3 or 4 or 5 of those items can get measurable results that you can see, what happens to those dollars.
exactly what I'm getting at.
I don't,
That's where-
everybody, I don't hear anybody saying anything here that we're not in sync with.
No,
I mean, everybody said, well, really, I mean, we're all pretty much on the same page.
we are. I just feel that this should be an extra bullet that's put into this, as a fourth bullet that says exactly this. We want to have these documents. We want to have it available to us because we're only going to have, a short amount of time to actually do this research and to make sure that everything is correct and have this oversight. So we have those documents available to us to tell us, okay, how many potholes were filled? What is the police response time? Has it improved? That's what I'm after.
Let me throw one other item on the table, and then we'll toss it over to Lee. It's on the work plan for next year to create an ad hoc committee to do this. In my view, this letter is nothing but a punt. This is, we don't have the information, we don't know what that list of materials is that we need, we have some ideas, we've all been through the list. We don't know where we're going with this whole thing, but we've got all next year to figure that out. And the big question is, what's the timing? If we have a 6-month ad hoc, how can we do this if it has to sunset in May or June? In other words, to get the report out right. So how the mechanics of getting this all together, but I think we all know that we need a lot more information, and we need the numbers. We can't get the numbers, the fiscal year hasn't closed yet, so we can't actually get the information that we're supposed to review. So I don't like this letter, I must say, because it's so vague, but on the other hand, we don't really have an opportunity to do anything stronger at this point. With that, Lee, would you kind of give us the city's point of view on this?
Yeah, no, so I mean, I think a lot of what you guys are trying to get at, like the information is available, right? And, a few things. We spent a lot of time in the beginning of the year trying to get you guys up to speed and educate around the budget so you guys felt more comfortable. And maybe that time would have been better spent on process and how we were going to do this together. But nevertheless, we're here, right? And so whether the letter is a punt or not, and I agree with Jonathan, it's perfectly fine in that last paragraph to say, we're going to be working with the city manager's office and the mayor's budget office to obtain more information, look at this. Everything you guys are asking for, to some extent, is there. And I'll hand out something and we'll walk through that. But especially on the performance, we have a program-based budget over a performance-based budget. Everything we spend money on, we measure. So that a lot of that information is easily attainable. Really quickly, you guys have heard me say this. You guys can do a deep dive into this, but it is meant to be a little bit higher level. So, this is from the actual ballot, and I know it because I wrote it. But this one paragraph, this sentence, it requires independent citizen oversight and annual financial audits to help ensure that the funds are appropriately spent. That doesn't mean you guys need to do the audit. In fact, no independent oversight committee would do audit or ask for an audit. Even budget people like me, we let finance people do audits. Like, I'm not capable of that. So don't feel that you need to do that big of a dive. In fact, the city wouldn't let you. You're here to represent and make sure what the city made a commitment to on this ballot box is held accountable. So that's number one. The second thing is I'll say a lot of if you look across the nation, a lot of these independent oversight bodies are around special tax. And that's really easy. If this had been a special tax, like let's say we just decided to do a public safety special tax, it wouldn't go into the general fund. It would be really easy to say the money is coming from here, we put it in this fund, and we spend it on this thing. This exercise would be really simple, just like Parks Commission pretty much with the parks bonds. That's a lot easier of an exercise. This is different because it is general fund, and Nick is right that the way general funds work, and not just ours. And I'll say our general fund, by the way, is probably smaller than most cities because we do have so many special funds. But even ours, it's about $1 billion, and things go in and become part of the base. And so it is difficult year from year to figure out, those 3 buckets. Like, here's what came in, and that's actually pretty easy to get. Here's what the tax generated this year. It goes into the general fund, and here's what it went out. I will say, though, and probably what we should have done in the first year was, the tax was passed, and because we started collecting the money really quickly in October 1, Gary's right. There was what we call manager's budget addendum that, we worked on to say, hey, we're going to get $30 million in this year, and what are we going to spend that on? And the way our budget works is we call it an incremental budget. It's what most governments do. Is if we've spent $1, we're going to assume we're going to spend it again. We only really address the changes year to year, whether we need to cut it, whether we want to increase it, or augment it. So really, what we didn't do as a group, I think, is starting with what we use the money for the very first year. We dove right into here's the budget. So I think, I do want to review this with you so that you've got a good sense of what we spent this $30 million on, and then I'll explain, in this year's budget what the sales tax is projected to increase and what the change was. But I think, this document is actually something that probably, you guys could use as a base from year to year. I mean, essentially what you guys want to do, and we'll walk through this, is you want to make sure, hey, the money they gave to crime prevention, that we didn't cut an exact amount the following year and decide to give it to public art or whatever it may be. I don't know. And that can be tricky. So in the first year, so we collected $30 million last year, or I should say in this year's budget. A big portion of it, $17.7 million, went to street pavement maintenance, but that was one time. So that will change, but we assume that was one time. The rest was fairly close to ongoing, and I will say don't pay attention to the numbers so much because it's like 3/4 of what a full budget is. The numbers are a little bit complicated, but we did go to improving fire and a medical response time. So that went into restoring engine companies so that we had no more browned out fire stations, as well as introducing 3 two-person squads to help with EMS response time. So we start to save more people's life, but also make our county response times so that we actually start to get our performance pay.
Why is the streets a one-time thing? I mean, we haven't fixed, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but we haven't fixed them all.
Yeah.
Can we keep pouring in the money on that?
That's a good question. I'll get into that.
Okay.
The second thing is we did add sworn police officers as well. So 1109 has been budgeted for a while. So 41 officers were added on an ongoing basis to bring the total up to 1150. We're not totally there yet, but we are budgeted for when that happens. We set money aside. The other one-time thing was setting one-time money aside for Fire Station 37 construction in the Willow Glen area, as well as money for reducing homelessness, crime prevention around burglary and neighborhood crimes, a little bit of one-time money to help the recruitment, hiring, and retention of police officers, and then more work around community service officers. So those are the not sworn police officers, but kind of right underneath, helping with a lot of neighborhood crimes. So, as you can see, this is fairly consistent with what the ballot statement said. In this year, for 17-18, sales tax actually has slowed a little bit. And I will say this is something, California sales tax is up, but for some reason in Santa Clara County, all the projections are down a little bit. So instead of $40 million, we're projected to raise about $38 million in this year. The second quarter, right around Christmas, was kind of slow compared to previous years for some reason. So the changes for that is the POA wage agreement. A good portion of this goes to help pay for some of that, to help with police officer recruitment, and that has shown dividends. Actually, just hopefully like in 2 weeks, you guys are going to see the Academy 30 numbers, which are amazing. I'm really excited about that. And that was the big change, as well as pulling back some of the money from the street pavement program to help pay for that. And the reason being for that is Measure B money from the county, the BCA sales tax started to come online, and then there's no council members in here, so I guess I can say it for Brown Act. One of the things we're going to do in our June budget message is we've had a policy for the past few years that's supposed to sunset this year, that our construction and conveyance tax, it usually just goes straight to our general fund. Mayor Reed put a policy in that the money that's created from there would go to street pavement maintenance. And so that was supposed to sunset this year. We're going to propose that continue for another 5 years. And so in the proposed budget, which I think Julie previewed with you, this year and next year we'll get up to 250 miles and start getting to the residential streets. So, when the council kind of looked at the money for the sales tax, not that they totally prioritize it, but, given the issue with the police officers and then the browned out fire stations, those were kind of, let's tackle those two things first. Because a lot of this money was kind of, we got it, a third through the year, and a lot of the ongoing things don't work when you get it kind of midway through the year. It made sense for some of these one-time quick investments to help, and because we didn't have Measure B money last year, or in this year to help with street pavement maintenance, it got thrown in there.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm okay with it. And one thing I think too with this, you have some level of flexibility in that, let's say, if you saw a concerted effort of that 40 million rather than 10% across the board for each one of these areas,
Yeah.
focusing for some reason, then some of the other areas that one year got less.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be an even distribution.
It's discretionary, right? And a good example of
discretionary among whatever items were identified in Measure B.
Yeah.
But one of my concerns is, and I play a budget game at work, okay, and one of the things, I'm saying, okay, well, you got 17, 18 million here. I want to see what was allocated or what was thought to be budgeted before that, so that you didn't take out 17 million over here, and then you're backfilling it with 17 million and it went somewhere else. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
'Cause I play
In
that
the context of
game.
this one document, it's really difficult to do that. But I think if we,
Yeah.
moving forward next year, use this as kind of a base, and whether it's Julie or I or someone else, we can kind of walk through the proposed budget. You're able to kind of look at that, right? It is a general tax, so it is meant to be somewhat flexible, and technically the council on any given year could spend it on whatever.
Yeah.
But the flexibility is important. Like the 2 million here, but it's really 4 million on an annual basis for reducing homelessness, the rapid rehousing. As the city's affordable housing impact fee and inclusionary fee come online, and over the next 3 years start generating $50 million, we'll be able to ratchet that back and spend it on streets and roads, or another fire station. So it is meant, as times change, to be somewhat flexible.
Okay, we're getting too deep in the weeds here on this, way too detailed. We have about 8.5 minutes left. Before we move on, let's hear from Olivia, from Terry, from John, from Jim, and from Rich. Anything to say on this quickly? Because then we gotta either fix this letter or send it as is.
So,
Speak loudly so we get it recorded.
Olivia Lamar with D6. I think that we're going to have to rely on me on this because he's the expert. I think that it is a learning process. It's our first time. We kind of did get thrust this from the beginning. Even though we have a little bit of knowledge of budgeting games, it's not the same as actually handling millions of dollars and stuff. So I want to kind of, honestly, I'm not 100% sold, but I will, if it is a learning process, and we're going to learn this as we go, and we develop a base, and we move forward from this, at least we're contributing somehow, as opposed to not doing anything and not having any oversight committee, because it's part of us, it's part of their job, and it's essentially the mayor and the council made it our job.
Terry?
Terry Martin, District 9. So before I went to our budget thing a couple of nights ago, for the mayor's budget message, I was totally against where we were going with this. After the budget, I have a better understanding of how general funds are spent and the big picture of where this money goes. So I think I'm going to be in a position where I think we need an amendment. We need an item 4 that says, let's go ahead and get some wording of some sort that says next year we do need more information sooner. Because really what happened last week is, here it is, sign off on it now.
Yeah.
And everybody in the room just kind of said, I don't even know what we're doing, right? So as long as we have a little bit more insight, I think that we're fine. So I would be in favor of adding, just a 4th item to that letter that already exists. That's perfect.
John?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I agree that number 4 needs to be added, as we discussed.
Lee, I just had a question. What is the city expecting of us, just flat out? What do you guys want in regards to the oversight?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Just to close your eyes and bless whatever we say.
We just recorded
That's not
that.
because that's right.
Can we quote you?
I think this is where I will say I probably disagree with staff. We look at this a little bit different, and in my role, even in the charter, the mayor's budget director is charged with budget engagement citywide, and so I take this pretty seriously. And knowing we talked about those service restoration priorities that the council adopted around police, fire, streets, community centers, and you can tell our mayor's frustrated with neighborhood services, right? That's part of Beautify SJ and all these other things. And so, not that all of this money can go to that, but I do think, having this conversation about, okay, yeah, the funds have stayed here, but I personally think, like we do with budget games and everything else, having somewhat of a conversation with you guys around, like, what do our individual neighborhoods need is important. And like I said at the beginning, you guys don't need the financial audit experience to do this. You guys have been represented to speak on behalf of, 50,000 people each, two per district, right? And so, if we're doing something, outlandish, like if you thought Beautify SJ was terrible, tell us, like, feed it up. I mean, not every commission has the opportunity to speak through the budget process on this stuff, so I think the fourth thing is perfectly valid, and the council, I think, is of the mindset of wanting to help you guys on this, so just be direct with what you want. I mean, say, hey, we want to work at this earlier, and we prefer help from the mayor's office and the manager's office as we go through this together. And remember, too, by the way, there's 4 brand new council members up there that are having an equally difficult time with the budget process. Like, we've spent a lot of time with them because it's complicated. So isn't it going to be news to anyone that you guys had a tough pass at this the first year? Just say it. I mean, there's a lot of things that, me included, we could have done differently with this.
Jim?
Yeah, and Lee, it is that uncertainty that kind of makes us a little bit wary of, do we really want to jump into this or not? And I agree with a lot of the things that have been said around the table, and I also agree with that 4th item added, to give this just a little bit more substance and teeth to it, to make it mean something. And I realize that this is just the start of it, and there's a lot more to learn for all of us at this table. But we're going to be held responsible to be reporting back to the citizens to make sure that the money is going where it's going. And that's what kind of worries a lot of us here. So we want to make sure that we're going to do due diligence in making sure that the money comes in and it goes out and it's going where it's supposed to go. It'll make the council look good. It'll make the commission look good. And it validates the measure. So I think it's real important to have that for a time.
Let me throw one last comment, and then we got 3 minutes to write this item number 4. I think what our job here is to provide assurance to the people who voted for this measure that the money is being spent in the way that people asked for. That really is, in the end, what the job of an oversight committee is. They promised you this, you got it. And if we find things that aren't right, our job is to point out where there are problems. They may be legitimate. It flooded, they couldn't spend the money where it went. We don't have to be right. We just have to say it was intended to go here, it did or it didn't. That's really what our job is here. So let's get out to item number 4 here real quickly. What do we want to say here?
Can we reference this, whatever this is called, say we need more information, such as the incremental...
Just say, the manager's budget addendum from 16-17 budget process on the sales tax allocation.
This is perfect.
But the only problem I've got with that was a year ago.
But it was,
but
that was prospective. This
right?
is how we're going to spend it, whereas our job is to say, did it get spent there?
Right.
Well, it did. Yeah, I mean, we can bring documentation to prove that. And, one of the things I'll just offer up, I know there's been a lot of changeover in who staffs the neighborhood commission, and that may have contributed a lot to kind of part of the ambiguity and communication issues on this. So, it's not typical for the mayor's office to step in on some of the commission work and do this, but related to the budget, I'm perfectly willing to come back in the fall several times so we can work through this and kind of put together a better framework.
That's great.
Very helpful.
We need that.
So just
Okay,
one comment.
right now, yes, what?
Just very quickly, it's just a 15-year assignment, essentially, unless at some point during that time, the council decides not to have us be the oversight body. But this is a 15-year tax, and as far as I'm concerned, we should be looking with 15 years of foresight.
And how we turn
Okay,
it over.
what does this item number 4 say? Right now I've got is we need more information such as MBA 14. Which is that paper you've got in front of you. Is that sufficient? And we can dress this up a little bit, but is that the attitude of the people at the table? Is that
In
it?
working with the manager's office.
And what was that?
I said, in working with the manager's office are the mayor.
I would say, city manager's budget office and mayor's budget office.
So need information such as MBA 14 to work with?
So, MBA
the
14
CMO and
from
mayor's
the,
office?
just, from the CMO and mayor's.
What I
mayor's, yeah.
originally put was, we want to get to work earlier on this, including with the mayor's office and city manager's office, to perform this role of oversight and to review expenditures of the Measure B tax revenues. The Neighborhoods Commission requires the following information: total money amounts of revenues collected, a detailed itemized report of where funds were spent, projections of where revenues will be spent in this fiscal year, and comparison of previous city budgets.
Yeah, those last two sentences are crucial. The last two
Are they, or
sentences.
do we do that next year?
Yeah, but
They might, my problem with that is they might not be sufficient. We may need, when we get into this next year, we may find out there's a lot more that we need to have. So
Yeah.
instead of
I think
specifying
it's just,
anything
it's
right
just an
now.
FYI, though, guys. It's just an FYI. Like, we might need this stuff. It's not.
Yeah.
You're not limited to it.
Okay,
So-
say those
You're not
again,
necessarily gonna get it.
such
All right,
as.
so
Ignore the
Sure.
first part.
All right, such as, but not in, not exclusive to, total money amount of revenues collected.
Can we just do a vote as amended per his comment
And then you send it to me later, is that everybody good,
Yeah.
comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's
Can
Okay.
you read it again, please?
Jonathan,
You
no.
know, if you could just keep doing what you're doing right there, that would get everybody on the same page quite literally.
Well, we're out of time. Okay, we're eating into time for other things, this has been our big.
Jonathan, why don't you read it again, a little slower?
Total amount of revenues collected.
Yes,
Detailed, itemized report of where funds were spent. Projections for where revenues will be spent the next fiscal year. Keep it up, Pete.
no,
Okay. Projections of where revenues will be spent.
yes, it's in the future revenues. Good.
All right. And then a comparison to previous city budgets.
Projection of revenues spent, not just the revenues, but revenues spent.
Okay, anything else? This good with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
as is, need a motion?
I motion to keep,
Motion from Wilcox,
second.
Wilkins.
second from Cunningham, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody
And
opposed?
just really quickly, so everyone knows, when you change the language after NBA 14, I would list the official name, because this name will be, council will know what you're talking about.
Subject line?
The subject line, yeah,
Yeah.
just
Sales
in
tax
parentheses or something, so they know kind of what you're talking about.
Oh, I understand, instead of calling it that.
It puts off on
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we assure that we will get the information that if we want to review it, we can get it?
There'll be an ad hoc next year, Olivia.
I mean, if you ask for something, maybe staff should bring it, right? They know.
Without burdening my concern is without burdening the already overburdened, short-staffed city staff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think what you're asking for is an overburden, quite frankly, and I think, a combination of myself or Julie should be able to do that without having to worry, like city manager's budget office. It should be fairly straightforward, and especially with that MBA serving as a base, and looking at, how it was spent and what's in the proposed budget. I mean, getting to you guys early with, like, what's in the proposed budget or what's in the mayor's March budget message, to see if there's any changes to that MBA 14, is really what's going to kind of guide your input. Like, hey, wait a minute, you're closing down these fire stations that you just opened with this money, and having that conversation, like, maybe there's a reason why, because of sales tax, but that's the kind of, I don't think it's an overburden.
Okay, we gotta move on, we're very.
Thank you, Lee.
focused.
Thank you.
So much
We'll be in
for your
touch,
time.
trust me.
See you guys.
Thank you.